If everyone would turn off your cameras and mute so we can get started. Okay, welcome. And this starts day 2 of our conference, Multi-Level Marketing, the Consumer Protection Challenge. I'm William Key, Professor of Marketing at the College of New Jersey. And I want to thank the animated steering committee that we have, who has worked long and hard over months under pandemic conditions to pull together a conference that has literally never taken place before. And this conference would not be possible, of course, in addition to our steering committee, if it were not for the wide range of experts who have taken time out of their busy schedules to share and discuss consumer protection and consumer harm in the MLM industry. Yesterday, we heard from FTC Commissioner Noah Joshua Phillips and the also heard from regulators, prosecutors, journalists, and academics. I want to also thank our participants and attendees who are joining from a wide range of time zones. A bit of housekeeping here. The attendees can choose to listen to English or Spanish. If you just look down at the bottom, you'll see a globe icon. And if you click on that globe icon, you can choose your channel, which is either English or Spanish. Recordings will be made. We have recordings of yesterday. We'll need a little bit of time to take those recordings up and break them into sessions. Access to those recordings will be available through the website. When everything's prepared, I will go ahead and send out an email to every registered attendee and panelists, letting them know that those recordings are available. And the other aspect I'd like to remind you is that we closed off the chat for attendees. It's just not possible to have chats going on when our sessions are going on. However, the Q&A icon also at the bottom is available, and that will be monitored. Every session has a moderator, has panelists, and has a Q&A person. So the rhythm of each session is that we will have the moderator controlling the flow of the session. And as we get near the last 15 minutes, we'll ask the Q&A person to then go ahead and join and present the panelists with some of the questions that have been put in there by the attendees. We may not get to all those questions. We are capturing the full range of questions after the event. And to the extent that we can post some answers to questions on the website as well. I want you to I want to note that the opinions of presenters are their own and do not necessarily represent those of their organization. You may hear this disclaimer repeated throughout the day. We expect to have a very full day and a very interesting day. Yesterday we had 414 unique attendees and participants. Today we're looking forward to another interesting day on different topics. And so I'm going to go ahead and get off here. And my colleague, Peter Vandernat, will be starting us on our first session of the day. Peter?
Thank you, Bill. Our first speaker today is Mr. Bruce Craig. Bruce is an attorney who is retired from the Wisconsin Department of Justice, where he served for many years as Assistant Attorney General. He was a litigator in their Office of Consumer Protection, and his work included a number of cases against pyramid schemes going back to the early 1970s. And with that, Bruce, you have the floor. Seems to be a small technical issue. There we go.
If you're going to speak, you have to unmute yourself.
Bruce, you have to
Mute.
There you go.
You got
Thank you.
okay. Good.
Good, good.
It's technology. That to me, the very interesting aspect of this is that this essentially started in 1969 or so, and it's still alive. And my participation started with lawsuits involving Holiday Magic, Coscot Interplanetary, and Bestline. And at the time, we weren't real familiar with all of this. It wasn't a familiar topic. And about 8 or 9 assistant attorneys general got together back then in the late 60s and tried to figure out what to do about this. And at the time, we had a very good connection with the Federal Trade Commission involving a guy named Gail Gotchel. And the Holiday Magic case and the Bestline case and the Coscot case is all basically resulted in injunctions. And Holiday Magic, William Penpatrick drove his airplane into a mountain after he'd lost on appeal. And so we tried to figure out, where to go from here. And the next critical moment was the Amway Ftc case, which tossed everything in a circle. That was in 1979. And the ruling that the Federal Trade Commission made in that context was that if a pyramid company had 70% of retail sales, a buyback provision that they were legal, and that created a completely different process. Ronald Reagan took the presidency at that point in time, and it said that he was fairly closely related to some of the pyramid people. And so that took the situation into a turmoil, I guess it would be. And then in 1970, I worked with drafting a provision in the Wisconsin law, which prohibited pyramid schemes, and which, of course, was somewhat preempted at the time of the Amway decision. And as I mentioned, Ronald Reagan helped do that. He essentially shut the FTC down. They reduced the electrical coverage, and Gail Gotchel could not be found anywhere. And so that began, the standard, status quo. And our pyramid, law was somewhat preempted by the FTC ruling on Amway. in 1982, we sued Amway without mentioning pyramid schemes, but on the basis of income misrepresentations. And we fortunately went into a deal with the Wisconsin Tax Authority, and we were able to see shielded tax returns of 192 top end direct distributors in Wisconsin. And I went to an economist, Reuben Buse at the University of Wisconsin, and asked him whether he could take those returns, shielded, and come up with a conclusion about the profitability that these top end direct distributors experienced. And his affidavit filed in 1982 on that topic indicated that there were 192 distributors and that they had an average annual net income of minus $918, which it didn't make a big splash at the time, although we did get on 60 Minutes with Mike Wallace, who apparently was friends with the Amway people. But it certainly documented the reality of income, even for the top people. Obviously, there were non-Wisconsin probably got the cream of the crop and the crop in that situation. So it was that's kind of where we got left. The Buse affidavit didn't really get us anywhere. I think at that time the FTC was pretty much locked up with the pyramid people. They had a business opportunity rule which they were going to promulgate that would require an expression of profits and viability of various company, but they saw to it that pyramid plans were exempted from the business opportunity rule, leaving vending machine operators and so forth. And so that kind of deadened the process as far as the states are concerned. The Amway decision and the federal Amway decision kind of took care of that. And and in a sense, this is where we are right now. The multi-level companies in this interim currently have roughly $1.5 trillion in revenues since 2009, and that's equal to, I think, the Biden proposition for infrastructure. And it's very interesting that the massive involvement here, obviously involving other countries, has really been not expressed in much concern. And I think what's happened is that most of the victims are low income, hoping to make a living. And those are the people in these other 172 countries, as well as here. So it didn't make much impact. The Madoff matter went crazy, and everybody was talking about it. But the $60 billion that Madoff got roughly was 1/3 of the annual income of these pyramid companies collectively. And so what's concerned me is this current situation involving many countries with little or no guidance, most of which basically live off the FTC Amway case without much conflict. China sold more Amway than the United States a couple of years ago. And so the damage is significant, and there's really nothing at the present time to stop that. It's slightly below the general radar, so there's no big movement nationally or internationally to stop this, regardless of the data that's been produced. And my thought has been that this conference, given its participants from many of the other countries that are involved here, that it's a necessity that this become an international issue explicitly, and that the governments of all these other countries take affirmative action to bring this to the surface. As I mentioned, part of the problem is that most of the victims are very low income. And then, of course, they're also intimidated by the fact that if it was illegal, they'd be participating in an illegal scam. And so they just tend to keep quiet. And of course, they're told that all these other people succeed. And so they're somewhat reluctant to complain because they maybe themselves were involved in illegal conduct, if that's the way it turns out. So I really think that this certainly is of the magnitude that deserves international attention. And I would like to urge those people viewing this program to begin to operate internationally. I think some places, Holland, Netherlands, and Germany have done something, but it has not been in any way effective. And so I'm hoping that this can be 170 countries involved. And income last year was about $190 billion. And so I guess to conclude, I would just really hope that there could be some coordination between these other countries, and a lack of effect of the Amway decision sort of controlling the discussion. Obviously, there's a great deal of money behind the pyramid situation by Amway and other countries. Amway, incidentally, for a while had a program at Harvard for about $1 million a year. They had what they called I'm just trying to think of the name. They had people, they would send, Amway would send Chinese people to Harvard, John F. Kennedy's government, every year. And it certainly tended to provide a serious sense of legitimacy, not only in the United States, but around the country, that if Harvard's dealing with these people, that's not a good idea. I wrote Harvard and the president, and she responded, and it resulted eventually in their shutting down this program after 3 or 4 years. But it does give an example of how potent these efforts are. And Amway, as I understand, got a waiver from China on the pyramid restrictions that they have there. Obviously, there's money trading hands, not only there, but in many other countries that permit the pyramid programs to continue, because there's a lot of these countries don't have particularly ethical governments. So, hi, Peter, and so I just like to close by making my point again, urging that other countries that are involved in this conference and others that can hear about this, that they begin their own programs, obviously with the assistance of the people here in this conference, to put this on the road. It's a incredibly unfortunate situation that has gone on for this long and exploited, $1 trillion from people who couldn't afford it, and it should be stopped. Next week, anyway.
Bruce, thank you. Thank you. I think
Sure.
you are one of the few people at this conference whose personal experiences as a professional and as a litigator go way back to the late 1960s, early 70s. I don't know if anyone else at this conference has that length of experience on.
Well, I'm 83. There's not many people still active on that, and I think it had something to do with the FTC Amway decision, because we weren't heavyweights.
Bruce, I'm sure that your presentation will lead to some lively questions. I would like to, at this point, introduce our next speaker.
Sure.
If I could ask you to mute and to turn off your video, please.
Okay, if I can do that.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. D. Anthony Miles. D. Anthony has multiple skills. He is a marketing expert, a professor, an expert witness, an entrepreneur, and a researcher of the MLM industry for about 15 years. D. Anthony, I invite you to give your comments.
Okay, I want to share my screen and just run through my presentation real quick. Let's see here. How do we do that? There we are. Okay. And I'll be brief. I'll try not to be long-winded. I always forget how to start these. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna talk about two things. I'm gonna talk about multi-level marketing, why it's a problem in comparison to traditional entrepreneurship. I'm also talk about multi-level marketing versus traditional marketing, what some of the differences, and I'll talk about my critical observations and conclusions. So first, I want to talk about how multi-level marketing, and based on my background and research, it is not entrepreneurship. Basically, multi-level marketing has three business models. The first business model, which is the most prominent in the multi-level marketing of any industry, is recruiting people. Basically, that's the business model. Multi-level marketing is to recruit people. They're more recruitment driven as opposed to product driven. The second business model, multi-level marketing, is product sales, and the sales tend to be based on normally when they recruit people for multi-level marketing, if they can't catch them to get into multi-level marketing, then they go, well, we like to recruit you as a customer. So they try to sell their products to the people they can't recruit. So it's more of a two-prong attack. Multi-level marketing is considered a form of direct selling as opposed to the direct selling association. That's what they consider multi-level marketing, is a direct selling mechanism, I guess, an arm of direct sales. Lastly, internal sales. So they have three business models. They have the recruitment, sale of the products, and internal sales. Internal sales is the people that get into multi-level marketing that are recruited as distributors. I use that word lightly. They tend to have to self-purchase products within the group. They encourage them not to go to retail outlets like Walmart. They try to self-contain all their products through the entity, the organization, the MLM organization. So basically, the structure of the business model is based on recruitment. Participants, getting people, showing them the plan. And that's basically what they try to do in terms of the business model of multi-level marketing. So based on my research and vast, exhaustive research of all the literature that's been out there over the past 20 years, I can give you 10 reasons why most people join MLM. Barriers to entry is easy. There's no restrictions, no licensing or anything. Low startup capital, which is what most entrepreneurs need to start up. They need startup capital. Home-based, they can work out of their homes. No experience needed. Everybody and their brother can jump into this parade of excitement to sell a product. Can't be fired or terminated. No franchising fees or royalties. No territorial restrictions. That means if I get into it, there are no preset territorial restrictions. That means everybody's a customer. Everybody can get in. Everybody can sell, which causes a problem because that means that hardly anybody can make any money because they have no territorial restrictions. No discrimination. The myth of achieving passive income. And they try to appeal to people's greed with cars, money, how much money they make, those type of things. So if you compare real entrepreneurs to MLM entrepreneurs, you're going to see some striking differences. Obviously, the low startup cost is one consideration. Industry knowledge. Most people that join MLM do not know their industry. Most people that start a business, they know their industry. Also, innovation. Usually people that join MLM are not innovative. They follow a preset structure, which is their distributors. And I'll say this again, and this is just my opinion, my expert opinion. MLM is not entrepreneurship. You're a distributor working for a preset system. You didn't start anything. So there's no innovation there. Most entrepreneurs, most, not all, have some level of innovation skills. Motivations, they're motivated by different things: money, lifestyle change, identity. Most entrepreneurs are motivated by profitability, building a business, trying to build a competitive advantage in the marketplace. MLM entrepreneurs, as I use lightly, don't think like that. Risk, they're willing to take risk. Most entrepreneurs are risk averse. They don't like to take risks. Business focus, again, their focus is recruitment centered. Someone that owns a business is more market centered or product centered. Some of the differences entrepreneurs of MLMs, DeLima et al. 2018 found some striking things between people that have gotten into the business. 2/3 of participants that got into MLM said they wish they had not joined it if they knew what they knew now. 52%, over half of the participants stated that the company's representation of achieving financial success was not very accurate. 4 in 10 said it was either fairly accurate or very accurate. So that's kind of a 50-50 thing there. Nearly half lost money. And one that got my attention the most is 1 in 4 reported that they broke even. So those are not really good numbers. And that's people that have gotten into business, and it seems like they'd have buyer's remorse of getting into the business. Then going further with DeLima's et al. Study, they found that most of them lost money. Majority lost money. Financial returns on investment, only 27% stated they broke even. And in profitability in the business, only 25% stated they made a profit. So that means if you look at these numbers, 75% of people that got into MLM did not make a profit. What are most common reasons they leave? That's pretty simple. Awkward to pitch to their family and friends, not making money as they expected, and not liking to sell at all. And the failure of MLM is everybody's not a salesman. People don't like to go to their family and friends. That's awkward, and it also damages relationships. Now, when you look at the small business development centers around the country with universities and the small business administration, they characterize their opinion of MLMs or people that participate in MLM, they're gullible. Lack education, that's probably an opinion. Some people are educated, but they're not very educated about the business. Tend to be dreamers. SBDC refuses to counsel anyone involved in MLM. In terms of financing, SBA refuses to finance any person that's involved with the enterprise known as multi-level marketing. So let's look at some comparisons. Let's look at the marketing side of it. Basically, MLM has two basic marketing models. They use transactional marketing and relationship marketing. So what do you mean by that? Transactional marketing is short-term oriented. It's more like buying generic products. They assume consumers are not price sensitive, excuse me. And then you have the relationship side of it. They use relationships for long-term, orientation to try to get people to stay with the company or whatever. So they use both of these as a two-pronged attack in terms of their marketing. They primarily use transactional, and in the relationship marketing, because of the way they're structured, that's probably not their focus. It's probably more of a problem with that, because MLM tends to leverage relationships and also, in the long run, damage relationships. So MLM, how do you look at it from a marketing perspective? What are some issues here? Market saturation. MLM does not take that in consideration. The pyramid infrastructure, morality and ethics. Most people that get involved in MLM, there's some deception there. When you tell people you're going to sell them a product, there may be some puffery there. I've seen some incredibly interesting MLM products. One of the ones most interesting was I'm not going to give the name of the company. If you put a pill in your gas tank, you would get 100 miles per gallon, which was found to be not true. And that was the MLM company that was doing that. Relationship issues, I touched on that earlier. Product pricing, their pricing is not, most likely is not competitive. And most of the time the pricing is either extremely high or not price competitive with a traditional retailer. And that also causes people not to give return purchase product sales because of the pricing. They usually sell commodity-based products that you can buy in a traditional retailer. Most of the products are not unknown. They lack branding. They've never heard of, I would say, if you want to compare it to Sam's Choices, be like their private label of products. So they most likely sell a commodity-based product with no value proposition. Either it's the value of the product is stronger, or the product has a pricing model. So either they sell the products, the commodity products, based on pricing or based on value. Market saturation again. They sell products that are mostly in a saturated market. You have personal retailing versus traditional retailing. I want you to pay a key attention to this, because people selling your product violates the 4 P's of marketing. And there's a 5th P of marketing called posture, how you look toward the customer. Someone selling a product in a store on a shelf is completely different than somebody selling a product out of their garage or the trunk of their car. So that affects their presence to the customer and their posture. Obviously, there's deceptive marketing, there's false advertising, then there's the non-retailing sales, which is the personal retailing again. So if you compare marketing, MLM marketing theory to traditional marketing theory, you're going to see some striking differences. In MLM theory, everybody's a customer. In traditional marketing, everybody is not a customer. Secondly, MLM theory is marketing and fraud and deceptions. Well, in traditional marketing theory, you want to build your brand by your reputation. You don't want to use fraud and deception, which is a common practice in some MLM companies. Third, you want to consider price differentiation or product differentiation. Well, in traditional marketing, your product must have differentiation. Most MLM products do not have product differentiation. They just have their product line, which is private, and no one's ever heard of the product or can compare the product to a product sold in traditional retailing or traditional distribution channels like retailing or retailing establishments. So if they don't have product differentiation, people don't know what that product is, and they don't know anything to compare it just by the reputation of the person that's selling them the product. It does all these miraculous things, but you have nothing to compare it to. And also they lack a strong value proposition. Lastly, I'm going to talk about marketing and relationships. Well, if you compare traditional marketing theory, marketing is based on relationships, building relationships with your customer. MLM doesn't destroy those relationships. So marketing, they're completely different in terms of marketing, traditional marketing. So lastly, I'll give you these points to go by. There's a profitability issue in terms of entrepreneurship. There's a high attrition rate. SBDC and the SBA refuse to deal with anyone that does MLM. They sell commodity-based products with no strong value proposition. MLM is not entrepreneurship. The MLM is a sales distribution role at best, but it is not entrepreneurship. MLM versus traditional marketing focuses on recruitment, confusing value proposition, market saturation is an issue, bad public image, and lastly, violates the 5th P of the 4 P's of marketing, posture, how you look to the customer. That's pretty much what I have to talk about here. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you. As is evident here, we have created a very open forum in which people express their own opinions, and based upon their own knowledge and experience, I'm sure it will lead to some lively questioning. I would like to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Robert Fitzpatrick. Robert is the president of the organization Pyramid Scheme Alert, and he is a well-known writer, researcher, and an expert on the MLM industry. He has just recently published a book in 2020 titled Ponzinomics, The Untold Story of Multi-Level Marketing. And with that, Robert, you have the floor.
Okay, am I there?
You are. We can see and hear you.
Okay. First of all, I say good morning and good afternoon to those in Europe. Y buenos días y buenas tardes a todos que escuchen en español. For the disclaimer, I'll add mine to all the others. The views expressed here are my own, only my own, don't reflect anybody else's on the planet Earth. Also, a little forbearance I'm going to ask for. I think in our future conferences, we'll have special effects, banners, theme song, and so on. But this time, since we are all doing this on a volunteer basis, each of us are kind of working our own technology, and I'll be showing a couple of slides and as maybe a little awkward. You'll see me looking through my bifocals and so on, trying to do it correctly. I prepared this presentation also as a written report because it's a kind of a journey and I didn't want to leave any piece of the journey out. So I've sort of outlined this and I'm kind of working from notes. If anybody wants the presentation, I can prepare it and send it to you along with the slides as well. Basically, everything that I'm going to say is in my book, Ponzinomics. I wish we could just have a discussion of that where I could go in more depth on each of these subjects, but this is a kind of quick tour of where I started and how I got to my own views about what is MLM. One of my goals today is to demystify MLM. Listening yesterday to hear how it's presented as a kind of a technical and legal conundrum, difficulties, what is it, and so on. My analysis doesn't actually come from any particular academic field. I don't have any letters actually after my name academically. So I'm not, and I'm also not a journalist or an attorney. So I'm going to be looking at this, what I would say, I call it a kind of common sense analysis of multi-level marketing. And it's based on also direct experience. 20 years I've interacted with thousands of MLM participants, attended MLM events and meetings, followed them online and so on. Of course, I've followed the media, I've testified in 35 court cases too. So this is sort of not limited by discipline and based on common sense. I don't think anyone needs to be an expert to see MLM reality. I don't think pyramid schemes are complicated, and I don't even think cultism, which we will talk about here, is outside common understanding. It's a human thing. It operates in many different areas of life, and we're going to show how it functions here in the multi-level marketing world too. I do think that grasping what MLM is, which is our topic here, mostly requires a willingness to believe our own eyes and trust our own experience. So the topic, what is MLM, is really to define it exactly. And I think this conference is evidence that MLM is today not still defined. Some people are thinking of it as scams, calling it a great industry and so on. It's all over the map. We still, after all these years, don't really know exactly what it is. And I think it's fair to say that until something is defined, it's impossible to really affect it. The coronavirus, until it was defined, we just dealt with consequences. When it was defined, a vaccine could be created. And similarly, the question with MLM, if it's not defined, it remains an enigma. In its disguise, and it has various disguises, it's impossible to understand it. And it becomes, for many people, they just throw up their hands. They don't understand what really is going on. My 20 years that I've worked in this field could be called a quest specifically to answer the question, what is MLM? However, very early on, I discovered why most people don't take this journey. And the first reason is MLM has a formidable disguise. First of all, it wraps itself in the American flag. It flaunts the dollar sign as a logo for wealth and happiness that it can deliver. Outrageously, it often wears the Christian cross. It always wears a smile and claims to offer a pathway to prosperity and happiness and fulfillment based on optimism and vision and confidence. So patriotism, profit, piety, and positive thinking. These are sacred symbols, especially in America, and showing how they are grotesquely deformed and manipulated by MLM runs the risk of blaspheming the symbols themselves. Most people just keep their distance from that. Second thing is the truth, which I will present the truth as I know it and as I've seen it. The truth behind MLM's disguise for many people is literally unimaginable. It can also be unspeakable. Saying the truth out loud about MLM can get you, can cause a career to end. It can result in your being labeled anti-American. It can also get you sued, which could ruin you financially. So I'm speaking about confronting a classic big lie in order to get to the truth of what is MLM. And Wikipedia defines big lie. A big lie is a propaganda technique. The expression was coined by Adolf Hitler in Mein Kampf about the use of a lie so colossal that no one would believe that someone could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously, unquote. Now, the elements of the big lie about MLM are as follows. MLM is a real business involving, as all businesses must, voluntary contracts with adequate disclosure leading to equitable exchange of value. That's the definition of a business. MLM products are profitably sold to retail customers based on demand in the open competitive market by distributors who own their own businesses. MLM is a unique and lucrative income opportunity for all. MLM, in fact, is one of the last best hopes for the average person to achieve the American dream. MLM's income opportunity is always unlimited. MLM's opportunity depends upon belief. MLM is the purest form of capitalism. MLM, invented in the United States, is a global ambassador of American values and business practices. MLM is perfectly legal. How did I come to view that all of these claims are a big lie? I pursued the truth for almost 2 decades. I also paid the price. Beyond being marginalized and discredited frequently, I was the target, I think, of the largest MLM slap suit ever launched. It was against me and several others for over $200 million. It took 5 years before this bogus suit was dropped. So my journey, it began with a personal encounter with a pyramid scheme in the 1980s. It, for me, was a life-changing event. I'm struck yesterday by how glibly many of us spoke about pyramid schemes as if they are kind of technical legal matters. The pyramid scheme that I was involved with was called a gifting scheme. They're all over the world now, still today. gifting scheme, gifting tables. The particular one I was involved in was called the airplane game. And the classification is just a description. The name is meaningless. The reality is something truly awesome. It's what I found is that a pyramid scheme is an enormous seductive force. It's capable of defrauding millions of people, actually, and creating a widespread popular form of madness. When it was revealed, the airplane game was revealed to me and others as a fraud, pyramid scheme, a delusion, I was dumbfounded. Why did I not see it? What happened to my values? What good was my education?
Robert, sorry,
I
we
believe you've gone on
missed you. I
mute.
think maybe you
How long ago did I do
shut
that?
yourself out.
Yeah. Am I back on?
Only a few seconds, yeah.
Oh, wow. Sorry for that. Okay. So I want to put up a slide here at this point, and I'm going to leave it up for a couple of minutes and go to another one. So this is the one I want to share here. This is the airplane game that I just described. On paper, it looks ridiculous, but I'm telling you, thousands and thousands of people, quite well educated, were in it. So just to describe it, first of all, it's 4 levels. And the 4 levels are the 8 people here put in $1,500 and they all gave it to this person at the top. And when that happened, a split would occur then. So this person would take over and have 2 and 4 underneath them, same on this side. And then each side would have to go get 8 more. So as you see, it begins with 8 and then 16, 32, 64, and so on. That's how it worked. Very simple. These names, pilot, co-pilot, crew, kind of equivalent to diamond, blue diamond, executive, fake names, diverting names. It's all about recruiting. That's all it was. However, the recruiting was never called recruiting. It was called gifting. And people actually said, it must be legal because it's legal to give money. Okay, so you're just giving and receiving. That was kind of the disguise. Okay, so now the airplane game, of course, wasn't called a pyramid scheme. No pyramid scheme calls itself a pyramid scheme. All pyramid schemes are disguised. And this one pretended to be a metaphysical program to spread abundance and actually end world poverty. It's one requirement for all of this wonderful transformational change to occur was belief. You had to believe in it. Only doubt could end it. People believed. It also promised 800% return on your money. Sometimes this program was called the infinity game to give it this metaphysical. The philosophical disguise allowed people not to look at the pyramid, and the benevolent vision of it played upon a kind of weakening. People were looking for something bigger and something reassuring, and it played upon the weakening faith in the American dream, which was very prevalent and still is. Now, MLM swept in after this, in my experience, where I lived, like a prairie fire. Everybody I knew suddenly was in MLM, and they were all recruiting or being recruited. And it was this time a different disguise. It was dressed up a much better disguise. It claimed to be a legal business. In fact, the greatest, newest business in the world, a transformational, breakthrough new model of direct selling. It offered a livelihood when many people were searching for livelihoods. And like the airplane game, it claimed it could change the world. And like the airplane game, it required belief. Okay, now me, after being already launched into my studies of pyramid schemes, I already could see clearly the menacing face of the pyramid scheme lurking just behind this business mask. And I immediately knew that MLM is not direct selling. Here's how the MLM model looked on paper in its barest form. You have a company at the top, the manufacturer, the MLM, Amway, New Skin, whatever it might be. You had a kind of core group of upline distributors, and they orchestrated events and programs, and they sold tools, and they were the kingpins, and they were the gurus, and they were the role models, and they orchestrated a huge recruiting program for more distributors. And each distributor was told that they could get up here by recruiting more and more distributors. But what's missing here? After that, what happens? Where do the products go? Well, they were supposed to go to customers, but I never found any customers. I never heard anybody talking about any customers. Whatever little bit of retailing was going on was perfunctory, and it was never enough for anyone to actually earn a true profit from it. So I could see that it wasn't like a business that I'd ever seen. I had spent 15 years working in distribution. This wasn't any normal company would say, well, where are the customers? How do you make money at this thing? Well, you make money by recruiting other distributors. Okay, then what? Well, then they recruit more distributors. Well, they could see that that's an absurdity. How could that be a business? Now, a lot of people did still think it was a business, though, because what else could it be? It claimed it was a business, but if it wasn't a business, what would it be? Exactly. Some said it was a new form of capitalism, but of course, some said it was a racket, a global racket. But how could that be if it were legal and the government allowed it, even endorsed it? It even got the endorsement of Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton. So how could it be a racket? At this point in my inquiry, I'm going to turn off my screen sharing here and go back to myself talking to you. I wanted to say that at this point in my inquiry, after publishing False Prophets, that's what I did. I eventually led to writing a book, False Prophets. I got diverted from my mission of finding exactly what MLM is. And I became an expert witness. I became a consultant to the news media. I edited the Pyramid Scheme Alert. I got immersed in questions about MLM, like, is MLM legal? What happened in the Amway case? Is this particular MLM a pyramid scheme? And how many people make money or lose money? These were the kinds of questions that I became immersed in. Now, these questions are all useful and they're important, but they rest on a kind of an unfounded presumption that prevents a true, full, in-depth inquiry. The presumption is that MLM is business, maybe a scam business, maybe a risky business, but still it's a business nevertheless. And if MLM were not a business, the presumption went, then surely it couldn't be operating openly. So surely law enforcement would be investigating it. So around 2000, with this presumption of it being a business, I started working with John Taylor, the late Dr. John Taylor, who was a real pioneer along with many others that are involved in this conference in researching multi-level marketing. And John and I decided to make a deeper inquiry into the claim, the business claim that MLM offered an income opportunity. And we looked at eventually over 400 MLMs. We studied SEC filings, we studied their websites, their policies, their contracts. If they had an income disclosure, we looked at those. What we found shocked even us, which was, statistically speaking, nobody makes a profit. For example, we looked at New Skin's numbers. And I'm going to go back to screen sharing here for a moment. bear with me. Okay, new skin. This is from the 2011 income disclosure. And just to give you an idea of what you actually are up against when you try to find out, does anybody make money in multi-level marketing? So here's what Nu Skin reported on its income disclosure, that in 2011, the average monthly commission paid to active US distributors who earned a commission check was $930 a month. Not bad, sounds pretty good. But then if you read a little further down, and it's very small print, it did mention that the active distributors were only 41%, 42% roughly, of everybody. Oh, okay. And remember that an average number up there was of those only applied to the active ones, but it also applied only to the active ones who got a check. Oh, so you read a little further, of those active ones, only about 13% got a check. Okay, so here's what we had to do then. You had to break it down. So how many got a check? Only 42 out of 100. How many of them actually were active and got a check? 5. So out of 95 got nothing. And we found this pattern over and over again, that by the numbers, 96 to 99% did not make a profit. Of course, we found also that these annual disclosures have a huge distortion. Bad as they are, they're only for a 1-year time frame. You really have to see the thing panoramically to see, because there's an 80% going on attrition rate. 50 to 80% are quitting, joining, quitting, joining. So the scheme is really these top people, you can't freeze frame it in 1 year. It's a dynamic process of churning people. So you really had to look at people over maybe a 10-year period. How many that had all have been involved in this over a 10-year period ever made a profit? It would be a virtual zero. Now, we also took a look at why that was. And I'm going to kind of skip through this part, because what we determined was that the pay plans of MLM are the formulas, which most people don't read. It's that complicated pay plan. Several people referenced them yesterday. Have a formula built into them. What it results in is that more money per transaction gets transferred to the top. This is the exact opposite of a sales company. A sales company normally gives most of the money to the people that make the sale or their immediate manager. And this was a puzzle to us. We said, if millions are recruiting and everybody's being paid something for recruiting, how is it possible that so few get any money? But then when we examined the pay plan formula, you could see that this thing is elegantly designed to pay off the recruiters of the recruiters. It's completely opposite to a sales company. In fact, it discourages selling. So we began to say it's an extreme money transfer. And this finally led us to say, let's just put aside this whole business about a business or not business, and let's look at, we're going to look at the, let me see if I can do this again. We're going to look at the universal characteristics. So let's just break it down as if we didn't know what it was, and see if we can determine what it is. We came up with four characteristics that are universal and define MLM. To the question, what is MLM? First is an endless chain. As far as I know, multi-level marketing is the only business in the world based on an endless chain. Others consider it impossible, an absurdity. You can't have an endless chain. There's a market. All markets have limits. The second thing is you must pay, and the payments for MLM, just as the airplane games payments were disguised as gifts, multi-level marketing's big payments are disguised as purchases. You have a quota you have to purchase, you're encouraged to purchase demonstration products and so on. You don't make money. I mean, let's get to the chase here. You don't make money unless you recruit. So there's a mandate, even though they can say it's not required. Well, yeah, neither is your success. So you don't recruit, you don't get paid. And then finally is the one I just described. the extreme money transfer. And that's in the formula, and that's built right into it. Now, I have one other screen I want to show. And let me see if I can get to this one. Sorry, I haven't seen it yet. So I won't be able to show it, it looks like. I'm sorry, I thought I could show it to you, and I realized that I can't find it exactly. Let me try it one more time, because it is an amazing picture. And it is, so here we go. Okay, can you see that?
No, we can't, not yet.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go back to this. So I'm sorry. I was fearful that I wouldn't be able to show this, and maybe in a later time I can show it. And
You've got us on tenterhooks now, you've built it up.
yeah. Okay. So can you even see me now?
We can see you.
Okay, so let's forget, I won't be able to show you. What I wanted to show you was the scale of the, John Taylor got a graphic artist to actually present the graphically depict the new skin pyramid, and exactly the model, graphically portray. You have a blue diamond at the top and how many are below it. So if I figure that out, I'll show it to you later on. So I want to move on from there then, because the last part is perhaps the most important, which was, we said we had 4 components, but there's a 5th. And the 5th cannot be graphically displayed. And it doesn't consist of a structural component. And it's probably the most important. And it's why MLM is considered a mystical thing, why it is so confusing. And it explains the strange behavior of people in multi-level marketing. And this has to do with how multi-level marketing recruits, and how it persuades, how it controls, and how it dominates the
No se
people in it.
escucha.
Ah, no escucha? No? Am I still on?
Yeah, we can hear and
Yes,
see you, Robert.
you're fine. Yeah.
Okay, so Elizabeth told me, she said, no escucha. So, so what we're talking about here is a cult, cultism. And again, I want to demystify this. What we're talking about are extreme, abusive, undue influence, as Stephen Hassan calls it, undue influence, an abusive method of dominating and controlling the information and so on. It's why journalists were so emotional, I think, in describing the reactions of people they had interviewed. And to understand it, we really can't look to marketing and economics. We have to look to people like Hannah Arendt, George Orwell, J. Robert Lifton, people like this who have studied propaganda, authoritarianism, and mind control. The phenomenon of MLM today, when you get into it, and this is why I would urge regulators, leave your offices and go there and look. It is an insular world. It is a language, it has its own language. Dissent is not allowed. It has its own ideology. It has fanatical followers, delusionary beliefs. It has leaders whose power is absolute. And that is how MLM endures. This is how it is able to have people go on for years losing money. And why, when they finally quit, they stay silent. In Ponzinomics, I tried to document how this happened, and it occurred in the 1960s when other cults were evolving in the United States. Transcendental meditation, the Moonies, and so on, Scientology. And MLM evolved right at this same time and became a delusionary economic belief based on very distorted concepts of capitalism and prosperity thinking. And in this ideology, the pyramid scheme becomes literally pseudo-economics. And it is based upon reality being shaped by your belief. And to separate people from objective reality and to lead them into a non-rational, irrational world, MLMs demean regular jobs. They call it slavery. They ban questions. They ban criticism. They discredit whistleblowers. They call economics and due diligence negative thinking. So what is the correct term that I eventually came to? I think it is commercial cult. What is MLM? It's a commercial cult. If you look at it just structurally, you have to look at how it operates. It operates as a commercial cult. But I admit we don't have good language for such a thing. For my book, I had to invent a new word, and I invented the word Ponzinomics. And here's the definition I gave for it. It's a pseudo-economic, all-encompassing, delusional belief system that promotes the swindle of a pyramid scheme as a valid economic model that promises believers a fulfilling and financially rewarding way of life, complete with mission, values, leadership, and worldview. That is what you enter when you go into MLM. I had to add one more sentence, however. The societal spread of Ponzinomics is necessarily accompanied by governmental collusion. That is, if it weren't backed or at least allowed by government, it would collapse on its own. The truth of it would become better known. But when it gains that, it can become actually normalized. So what is the answer to what is MLM? I think it's right in front of our face. We all know it. That it's a pyramid scheme is obvious right on the face, just looking at this, the structure and the policies and so on. That it's deceptive, that's also well documented now. That it produces these massive rates of loss and churn, this is also well known. That it has a history of buying political protection, this is well documented. And that it has a capability of literally taking total control of people, this is also well known. What's missing is the willingness to just acknowledge all of this. As I said, trust our eyes, trust our experience of it. Recently, and I'll conclude with this sentence, Peter, we've seen news reports that MLM has been involved with QAnon. There was an HBO documentary about MLM devolving in one of them, a company called Nexium, developing into a sex slave cult. This shouldn't be surprising. MLM has been a pioneer in disinformation, alternative facts, and an delusionary, separate world of infinity, unlimited markets, unlimited income, markets that don't diminish, and so on. So my hope is that from this conference, we'll have many more people taking a look at this from all the various fields to finally allow us to have a consensus definition. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for that presentation. I can see from the Q&A board here, there are lots of questions waiting, and we ask Mayor O'Sullivan to handle the Q&A.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, there are a lot of questions. I hope we can get through a few. So if the panelists want to turn back on their screens, that would be great. First question, I think for Bruce Craig, there were quite a few questions around your work on the Wisconsin distributors, that top 1% paper that you talked about. So one of the questions was, what levels did that focus on within the MLM? And another one was, what was the source of the data? Bruce, you are still not appearing for us. Okay, maybe we'll come back to that one. D. Anthony, interesting question here. If we say that MLMs are mischaracterized as entrepreneurship, how can this misconception be corrected among academic faculty?
That's a really good question. We're going to have to work at it because for a long time, academics would not acknowledge the even existence of multi-level marketing. And we definitely have to bake some type of way to present information to them to let them know it's a type of entrepreneurship, if you even want to call it that. But it's definitely something that we need to do in terms of literature, in terms of entrepreneurship literature, and saying what's good types of entrepreneurship and bad types. MLM is not entrepreneurship. However, it is a type of business, which should be obviously characterized that. So I believe that that would probably have to come from the academics in terms of putting it in the literature, providing workshops and those type of things.
Thank you so much, Dee. Bruce, I can see you there again. So yes, some questions around your work with the Wisconsin tax returns paper. So the questions were about what levels in the MLM did that focus on, and how did you source that data?
People that we looked at were direct distributors, which was the sort of top level of Amway, and there was 192 of them, and I'm not sure exactly how we did this, but we agreed with the Wisconsin Tax Department to provide the tax returns for those people, and we would shield the names. They shielded the names, and so then we had an economist take the net incomes of all these people and submit the affidavit, which the average net income was minus $900. Does that answer the
Yes, I think so.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Then there was another question, two questions I think we can link. Somebody was talking about, how the changes in the industry since the 1970s, DSA codes, DSSRC, and so on. And then there was another question, which I think we can probably link to that. Do you think that existing bodies are sufficient, or do you think that a new organization is needed to oversee the industry?
Yes, but at one time I wasn't quite sure I understood it.
I'm so sorry. The question was really about the changes between the 1970s and now. And do you think they're sufficient? Do you think existing bodies are sufficient to police the industry? Or do you think there needs to be a new organization?
Good question. I haven't been real happy with the way the Federal Trade Commission has dealt with this. They exempted them from the income disclosure process. And the new Consumer Bureau that Senator Warren establishing, it's not new, but Trump, shut it down. I can't remember the name of the thing. And Rohit Chopra from the commission is going to head that. And I thought possibly that organization, in conjunction with the FTC, because there's some good people there, should set up a I'm not sure what it would be, but the money, we're talking $1.5 trillion, $1.5 trillion involved here, and it certainly would deserve an organization capable of dealing with that. It's not just a passing business fad. It's massive.
I'll move on to, we obviously have a lot of questions for Robert. I'd say go read the book, but really interesting abstract kind of question here. Robert, what do you think is worse in terms of societal damage, cash pyramid schemes or MLMs?
Oh, that's an easy one. John Taylor and I used to talk about this all the time. These gifting schemes are outlawed all over the country. I've seen young women being taken off in handcuffs to jail who were leading these schemes. And they are considered illegal. People can understand it. But in terms of the scale, my snafu of being unable to show that one graphic, sorry for that. But the scale of multi-level marketing in dollars and numbers of people. Also the leverage. It took only 8 people for you to get your money, right? And so in those little gifting schemes, 10% actually roughly got their money out. Of course, they got it from the 90% who were tricked into losing theirs. But it takes thousands of people to make one person profitable in MLM. So no, in terms of these things are a pyramid scheme writ large on an industrial scale. It's obviously far, far worse.
And then we had someone make more of a statement, which I wondered what your thoughts were on this one. In most direct selling firms, the preferred customers are the vast majority of the business. Those are people who join for a discount on products, not to build a business. That's something we hear commonly. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, in my little graphic that I showed, you have the distributor, and let's put all those preferred customers down there below them if you did. By the way, this is a new concept, this preferred thing. They used to be called distributors. They've been just renamed. They buy at wholesale price. So how in the world does a distributor make money on these preferred customers? You would need a vast number of them, and you don't get paid on a retail commission. You'd only get paid on your bonuses. And the bonus is a function of recruiting, actually. It's a volume thing. So I don't consider it valid. It's a new concept, and I think it's merely a dodge that is being used to evade the reality that this is not really a business. And by the way, also, I noticed, and over these many years, people don't stay buying these things. They may be reclassified a preferred customer. Within a couple of months, they stop buying. It's not really a stable base of customers at all.
I can see people are putting their hands up. If I could ask you to just put your questions in the Q&A box, that would be great. I think a question probably open to the panel. Is a legislative solution to the issue of customer harms in MLM possible?
For me, I don't think that multi-level marketing can be regulated. And this gets to the definition. The FTC, by definition, is a trade regulator. That implies multi-level marketing, as it's designed and operates, is a viable business. My presentation was essentially to say it's not a business, so it really doesn't belong in that area. We already have laws against fraud. I don't think we really need a new one. I would say this is where the Department of Justice needs to go take a look.
Bruce, did you want to come in on that one?
Well, I think we drafted a provision in Wisconsin that didn't have the retail sale exemption, which is the Amway passive. That's where the preferred customers are. They buy, but they buy for their own consumption rather than for somebody else. And I think there's a possibility that there's legislation which could be drafted which would deal with this. It would overrule the Amway case, but I think it's something it could be done, and I'd like to see it, as I've said, done on an international basis.
Great, thank you. DeAnthony, did you want to come in on that one?
I'm gonna piggyback on what Robert and Bruce said. That's a nice to do, but not a. I don't think I can see it conceivably being done as a law because we're in a free market system. They'd shoot that down before we even have the ink dry on it. I think it's not attainable unless we have some specific things in there in terms of a law, but that's really not attainable. It's just one of the things we have to live with. I guess we could say we can come up with a hate crime bill for MLM, you know. Robert would probably back me up on that, maybe Bruce, but it's really not attainable. At this time, it's not attainable.
I think probably quite a marketing-y question, so maybe we'll go to D first on this one. MLMs and awards that they win from the industry and outside it. Do you think that that's an effective marketing strategy? And do you think that these are real awards?
I don't think they're real. MLM is on the quest for being accepted as a regular business, and definitely it's a different animal in terms of business. I see that as their aims to try to make it credible as a business. Anybody could have an award, and there's no way to prove that what the awards were based on. I believe that's just one of their avenues to try to build more credibility. I've seen awards. I've actually attended MLM meetings, and it's kind of the same song and dance. This guy won an award for so many sales in this region, which I don't believe. Now, conversing with Robert, all of that is a dog and pony show, so I don't believe it.
Does anybody else want to come in on that?
Well, I think there can be legislation which can deal with these schemes. It's possible to delineate the elements of it, and particularly now that we have a great deal of experience. And I would think it's as illegal as the traditional Ponzi scheme has been. It's got characteristics and elements which can be proven, and I think that legislation is possible.
We have, I think, probably a final question here. I think I know Robert's answer. Somebody asks, is there a right way to do MLM? I sometimes hear people say that MLMs are good if done right. I can already hear Robert's answer. Go for it, Robert.
Well, again, gets back to this definition. What is MLM? And John Taylor and I used to speak about this all the time. If you fixed it up and said, now there is a legal business, it wouldn't be MLM. It would be something else. You can't have an endless chain. I mean, that's inherently deceptive and fraudulent on its face, to base an income proposition and charge for it based on infinity. Maybe in churches you can sell infinite grace or something, but you can't sell it in business. That's not considered legal. And so, no, I don't think MLM can be fixed, and I don't think that you could do it right. The elements that I described, those 4 components, if they're still there, you can't change that. And that defines what MLM is.
I know there are a lot more questions showing up. We are going to kind of run out of time on this panel. There is a facility for us to save the questions. And so I know particularly there's a few for Robert that I'm sure we would be able to send to him later, and he can decide if he's able to or wants to answer those.
Morar, thank you. And I want to thank the panel, and thank you, Peter, for moderating this. We are about to go into a 10-minute break. Our next session is how do MLMs recruit and retain participants? We'll start around 10:40. I just thought I'd add to Dee Anthony's comment about awards. 2 MLM companies who received awards from the Direct Selling Association were then subsequently successfully prosecuted by the FTC for running pyramid schemes, Vima and Advocare. So I think it's worth noting that the awards may be meaningless. See you in 10 minutes.